Hey, everybody. I am so sorry that I'm not there with you in person. I mean, in Zoom and in person. But this week changed a lot for me from when JD and I talked about me talking through some of the things that even kind of in my own life and circumstances had been happening, some of the stuff of my most recent trip. So I would absolutely love to be there with you. A couple weeks ago now, well, I guess 3 weeks ago now, my mom had a few mini strokes and fell some pretty difficult falls. Ended up in the hospital and then a rehab facility for a couple weeks. And there have just been enough things the last week or so about her own decline and then some of the care that she's receiving there, where you kind of get that ache. You're like, oh, it's time to get on a plane. So thanks so much. Really, I love being able to join you guys in the harbor. It is one of the highlights of my week, just being able to see a group of guys like this. One of my heartbeats is to see men really activated to be better friends, better teammates, better coworkers, better bosses, better husbands, better fathers. And it's been so cool to watch a group of guys really not only be that for one another, but really raise that up themselves. And so thanks for letting me I feel like I get to kind of just be a part of a group and hear and learn from you guys and really, really appreciate that very, very much. I want to take just a couple minutes and talk with you, not really just a couple minutes. I want to take a few minutes and talk with you about some stuff that JD had asked me to share about, specifically related to rest. I think rest is really difficult. We're about to get into whatever this fall is going to look like. And there are some kids that are going to school, some kids that aren't, some kids it's all the time, sometimes it's some of you are working remote, some of you are working in your, physical offices, some of you are out of work, and some of you are retired, right? We have this massive difference. And I think lots of us assume things about one another. We assume about one another, well, rest would be normal if I was single. Rest would be normal if I didn't have kids. Rest would be normal if I was retired, right? We have all these ideas and assumptions about other people. But I think one of the things that I have become acutely aware of is this right here. Rest will never find you. You're never going to be in a situation where rest just like comes knocking on your door. That is just not the way that it works. You are going to have to make time, make margin in your life to be able to really think about and incorporate rest. And I know that probably sounds trite, but I think for all of us, we find ourselves in the midst of the chaos and the busyness, and no matter what your world looks like, it feels probably like it's never been busier than it is right now. And so I get that. Trust me, I get that. I had a friend who I worked with really soon out of graduate school, and he just said, here's the thing. Everybody in your life will always ask more of you than they will offer to you. It's going to be up to you to create and sustain healthy boundaries of what you need. And in ministry world, the hard reality is this, that there is never a time when I'm off. There's never a time when I get to shut it down. There's never a time where there's a switch, right? You're always on call. Some of you have jobs like that. And so figuring out for those of us that are in that world, how do we do it in a world where the phone doesn't always get to get put on the shelf? And when there's an emergency for somebody else, it's an emergency for you. And they don't care how many times that's happened this week. Those are the kinds of pressures that I think understanding that rest will never find us, that we have to find rest, really forces, I think, an intentionality that can be so good and so healthy for each and every one of us. There is a pastor in California named Rick Warren. He wrote a book called Purpose Driven Life. They've sold a few copies of it. Anyway, I heard him speak a number of years ago, and he had this quote that's really rung with me. And my group, what's up, fellas? They've heard me mention this quote before. He says this, he says, to avoid burnout, that thing we all know we're trying to avoid. He says, divert daily, whatever relaxes us, withdraw weekly, a Sabbath, we'll talk about that, and abandon annually, disconnect completely. And I think that rhythm, when I heard it the first time, I thought, diverse daily, I think I get that. I understand kind of what that means. I think in my head, I thought that just meant like my time studying the Bible. And while I definitely think that's important, you should do that. You should pray. You should spend time with God. No matter how connected to faith you are, it's a good thing for our focus and our understanding of where we're connected each day. I also think it challenged me to think about, what am I doing each day that relaxes me? I did some intensive counseling after my dad passed away last year. And if you're keeping score, yeah, I'm going to see my mom right now. And it looks like we're down to months, maybe days. And that is, appreciate your prayer. I don't, it's uncharted territory for me. I can't imagine what it will feel like the one day in the future when I just don't have parents. I don't know what that feels like. And I remember in a conversation with my counselor back in December, we were kind of talking about rest and processing. And he said, Phil, where do you ever get to go like this? And I had no answer. And I think all of us have a different answer maybe to that. But I think I've got 4 little kids and a pretty demanding job and pretty like high learner perspective. So when I'm not working, like I like what I do. And so I'm learning about what I do. And I'm learning from leaders and other pastors, and I'm watching stuff and listening to stuff. And I think it really challenged me to think about rest, like actual relaxation. And it was really helpful. So I think it started to help me think about what that one could look like. Withdrawal weekly, this kind of Sabbath reset, I think looks different for everybody. For some of you, that's going to be on a Sunday or on a Saturday. For me, it is never going to be on a Saturday or Sunday. Those are work days for me. But Monday typically can become more like a Sabbath for me professionally. I'm doing different things, kind of breaking rhythm up. And then for our family, Friday is Sabbath, right? And so we carve out part of the day to be super disciplined about this, but then just in general are like, what gives us life? What replenishes us, what reconnects us with one another and with God, right? So maybe maybe all you showed up for today was to hear that quote and to think about those 3 frame of references. Here's what I'll tell you. A year ago, other than spending time with Jesus every day and listening to podcasts, I had none of those other things, none of them. And that last one especially was mind-numbing to me. I just couldn't imagine. He talks about a week where you literally just like peace out on life. And I was like, I cannot imagine what you're talking about. But the theological underpinning that he references here in Psalm 127 is this right here. It says, in vain you rise early and stay up late, toiling for food to eat, for he grants sleep to those he loves, right? And it's this beautiful psalm, this poetry that talks about the fact that oftentimes what we are doing, if we're not careful, when we don't take breaks, when we don't rest, when we don't relax, when we don't reconnect with people that we love, that love us and with God, it's because we have this underlying false assumption that it all depends on me. That if I slow down, that if I take my foot off the gas, that if I let go of the steering wheel, everything's going to fall apart. And that it all depends on me. And I think whether you feel that way at home or you feel that way at work or you feel that way in some sphere of your life, it is a incorrect perspective, because God is the one that is working behind the scenes. There's this one section where Jesus is teaching and he talks about the fact that the grass of the field and the birds of the sky, they don't work, they don't toil, they don't do anything for their own survival. God takes care of them. And how crazy is it for us to be so consumed and so worried about the future when God loves us so much that, of course, he's going to treat us better than the plants and the birds of the sky. And so I think it comes down to this trust in God that it's okay for me to rest. It's okay for you to rest. Not only that, you were actually made to rest. And so I think for me, I just was really challenged to think through, how do I do that? What does that look like? And then for the last 2 years, last July and then just last month, I've been able to go to a place in Fort Smith on the Bighorn River in Montana. I was very surprised that we were able to go this year, kind of with everything that was going on. But the advantage of Montana is there's like nobody there. So it was still possible to do it. And it was a bunch of things that I probably wouldn't have told you I would have found rest in. I grew up as a Boy Scout, Eagle Scout, camping, all that stuff, but it just wasn't, like something I got super into as I got older, especially with little kids. But you go there, you stay in a really nice cabin, kind of with other guys. In the context that I was in, I was staying with pastors from all around the country, some of which I knew, some of which I didn't. And the conversations that you get to have are awesome. And it's basically just a week to completely unplug. And I think at first I was pretty skeptical that that's what it was, especially year one. And about Wednesday of year one, I was like, oh, there's no pitch. Like it always felt to me, maybe you've been in one of these before, it always felt like a timeshare presentation, and you're like, oh, I like the buffet. The space is really nice, but like, when is the hard sell coming? And I was just waiting for it. And then I realized like, oh, there isn't one. And it was so life-giving for me, not just in year one, but then to be able to go back and year two experience basically where I left off. And in year two, I deleted email off my phone, and my assistant was kind of managing that for me. I deleted social media stuff off my phone. We use an app on our staff for kind of two-way radio stuff. I deleted that off my phone. I was connected to my wife, and that was it. And it was awesome. And I don't know like how that works in your world. I don't know if that's possible. For some of you guys, you're like super outdoorsy. You do what I just described all the time without anyone having to do that. I had like guides showing me how to fly fish. This year we went and shot prairie dogs, which was crazy. And on this, there's a farm or a ranch that they're connected to that has 450,000 acres. And so you're just kind of, it was unbelievable. And you have meals around a table, and you connect with one another, and you play cards, and like, it's just an awesome week. It was an awesome week. And I think for me, it wasn't just that Montana was good. It was that. But I think it was also, I had to learn that Montana was okay. And I had to figure out, like, how do I take what I just felt that was so good and so life-giving and incorporate it more regularly into my day? And so here's an encouragement I would make for you. This book has been a really helpful book for me over the last year. There's a guy named John Mark Comer. He's a pastor in Portland. Really, really thoughtful guy, does a podcast as well. But he was a pastor at a really, really large church, and then really got burnt out and just was like, this isn't the way I want to live my life. And the reading will challenge you. It's very thought-provoking, but it's just basically about the way, not just that we take rest, but the way that we sort of erode our life in all the other times. When you're not resting, when you're not in Montana, when you're not on a trip, when you're not relaxing, like, why is it that we feel all of this going on? And some of it is like technology tips, like move Facebook and Instagram and those kinds of things off of your main screen. Some of it is turn off as many notifications as you can possibly get away with. Some of it is about like rhythms in your day or your week. Some of it is about setting up the opportunity for you to have Sabbath each week. But even if you apply 1/10 of it, I think you will be more than 10% better in the ability for you. Like if we think about our engines and we think about the temperature that they run at on a regular basis, and if you could lower the temperature that your engine runs at from a dangerous temperature, which many of us, that's our life, to a safer temperature, we will prolong the life of our engine. You will prolong the life of your leadership engine, of your faith engine, of your relationship engine far into the future versus continuing to redline because you and I've convinced ourselves that it all hinges on us. So that's my plug for that book. Here's what I had to figure out though. How do I find Montana in normal life? I had to figure out, what was it about Montana that was so helpful for me? What was it that could be replicated even when I wasn't flying to Billings and taking a car 90 minutes and getting to this space once a year? How could I do that more regularly? And I think some of it surprised me. For me, part of it was getting outside. Like I think I realized I would just rather be outside all the time. One of the things I love about Colorado is that we can sort of just like kick back and rest. And if you're not in the sun, there's really not like a month where it's hot enough that you can't just be outside. And so part of that for me was understanding that there was this connection that I could be a lot better as a person, way more connected to people and way more connected to God if I incorporated rhythms of being outside. And so maybe for you, that's super easy. Some of you have backyards that I would just like, if I knew about them, I would just like show up at your backyard and just rest. Like, it's awesome. It's an amazing backyard. I don't have one of those yards, but you do. And that's amazing. And that's an investment, right? And some of you figure that out. Some of you, you're like super outdoorsy, right? So some of you fish all the time. Some of you hunt all the time. You love this. I have a buddy that has he has 2 quads and then like a side-by-side, and he does it all the time. I could call him up, I guarantee you, today, and he'd be like, yeah, I'll figure out a way. Let's go this afternoon, you know? And so some of you, that's your thing. And then some of you are not outdoorsy at all. Some of you, it's like, I want to curl up and watch a good movie. I want like air conditioning. I want whatever. I think we just have to figure out what is the place where we can find rest like that. For me, I was trying to identify it based on something that I had experienced in Montana. The second for me was solitude. And these are not all things that have to happen at the same time. You're going to see that in just a second. But I think I realized that I needed periods of time where the noise was gone, where somebody didn't need me, where somebody didn't have questions for me, where I could just genuinely shut it down and rest and be silent. And that was so good. Montana is so helpful for that. They talk a lot about like, hey, take from this week what you need, not what you want. And so like, it's easy to just go hard and hang out and play with guys all the time and like go fishing and shoot stuff. And like, it really is like a bunch of grown men getting a chance to have like a week-long play date. That's kind of what it is. And the opportunity to be able to do some of that stuff is really fun, but you still end up sometimes tired, right? It's the difference between rest and recreate. Sometimes we end up just pushing the needle in a different way. And so last year, especially, my dad's first birthday since he'd passed was during that week. And so I just took the day and rested. I didn't go anywhere. I stayed back at the cabin. And in silence, I did some journaling, some reflecting. I slept. And it was so good. Stuff I just normally would never. I would always be thinking, what's the next thing I need to do? Where should I be right now? Who needs me? Third is fun. I talked about four-wheeling, super fun. Shooting stuff, super fun. Fishing, even though I'm not great at it, super fun, right? Like, what are the things that you actually enjoy? Because I'll tell you this, I think most of us, we settle for numb over fun. I think most of us, we basically have decided if I can just sit on the couch, right? Or maybe for you, it's sit at a bar and drink a beer and you're not even enjoying it. You haven't asked the question if this is fun, like in a super long time. And so being able to go like, what is it that you actually enjoy doing? What's a hobby for you? Somebody asked me a week ago, hey, what would you do if like you had money margin and time margin? And I was like, oh, I'd golf. Like 1,000% I would golf. That I love to golf. It's super fun. It does a bunch of the stuff that I like and incorporates it, right? That's a thing that I like. What are the things that you like? Sometimes I find myself, there are things that I do, right? Like I'm binging a show or whatever. And like, I'm not really having fun. I'm just settling for numb. So for you, I would challenge you to think about that and have the fun answer. Know what that one is. And then lastly, one of the things that I wrestled with a lot with my dad near the end of his life was he didn't have any friends. And I just remember thinking, I don't want that to be true of me. And one of the reasons that I love this group, right, is that there are several of you that I interact with like on a regular basis. We'll message back and forth, or maybe we've gotten together, right? And it's an opportunity to like actually be friends, to like actually hang out with other people. And I think that as men, sometimes what happens is we just settle for acquaintances or settle for colleagues. And I remember it was probably about 10 years before my dad had passed away. And I'm 15 years younger than my oldest brother, right? So I'm pretty young. Like when people would see my dad and see me, they would often think like, is he your grandson? Like that's how big the age difference was. And I remember a colleague of my dad's that he had worked with for decades, just randomly was asking my dad who I was. He was just meeting me. And my dad said, this is my son, Phil. He's my best friend. Now, if you know my relationship with my dad was physically abusive. My sister would tell you he was sexually abusive to her as a child. And I got to watch God do an incredible work in his life near the end of his life. So thankful to have been able to see that. But our relationship was never what I would consider best friends. I mean, we talked on the phone and we knew each other and I loved him. But I just thought, this is it. This is the ceiling of your relationships is me. And so I think I've just committed to having better friends than that. So there's an app on my phone called Marco Polo. It's like a two-way, it's almost like video voicemail. It's free. It's really helpful. So I have buddies that I've done ministry with or I'm close with from decades, right? That are like, I'm super deep friends with them. I stay in touch often. And then I have friends that I get together with on a regular basis. There's a group of friends I get together with every Thursday. And it's been so helpful to really have that group that's life-giving for me. Doesn't mean I don't need solitude, but I need them too, and figuring out which is which. So I would just say for me, a big part of it was finding Montana in normal life, was identifying these things. I'm going to challenge you to do that in your groups in just a minute. Here's the questions I would love to leave you with. What are the activities that bring you rest? What are they? Like, can you think of them? Maybe for you, that's a specific place. Maybe that's a thing you do, right? When is the last time you did any of them, right? Like actual rest, not just fun, not just grip it and rip it, not just I got to watch that on TV, like actual rest. When's the last time you did them? And then how can you plan for that in your life and help others in your family to do the same? Not do the same things, but here's one of the things that I've learned over the course of all this. I have to think about this in my home. Part of my spiritual leadership of my family is I have to think about this in my home with my wife, and I have to think about this in my home with my kids. I don't have to be their social committee planner, but I need to create an environment of love and support that when my wife says, hey, I want to go out of town with my friends to do whatever. I don't know if we have the money for it, but I'll figure it out. I don't know what we'll do to make the time work, but we'll figure it out, right? When we create these reciprocal relationships where we submit to one another and we love one another as Christ has loved us, then it makes it so easy. When I say, hey, babe, I need to do this, I'm going to go hang out with these guys, whatever, she knows, especially because she's seen me over the last 2 years. She's like, you need that. Like, I need you to have that. And then vice versa, I can do that with her. And then with our kids, we're trying to incorporate that understanding even into their life now. What is it for you that's life-giving? What do you really enjoy doing? For one of our kids, it's walks. He just absolutely loves walks. For one of our kids, it's, snuggle time, watching a movie. For one of our kids, it's going out on adventures, And so like, I want to know that about the people that God's given me stewardship over in my life, not so that I can control it, not so that I can manufacture it, but so that I can make sure that loving ability and permission is ready to go, and that we're building that kind of margin in our calendar and our finances for people to be able to do it. So anyway, I hope that's helpful for you guys. I hope you have a great discussion in your groups. Again, I'm so sorry that I can't be here with you, but just know I'm praying for you, praying for these conversations, and so thankful for this group. Let me pray for you before we go. God, thank you. Thank you for the chance that we've all gotten over the course of months because of leadership from guys like JD, guys like Nick, so many guys that have invested time and heart into the leadership of this. And many of us, God, we're just receiving the blessing of that work and that investment. I pray for the guys that are listening to this right now, that you would use this to spark something in them, that we wouldn't all constantly be running on E, that we wouldn't constantly all be running on that H inside of our temperature inside, too hot, running too fast, but that, God, we would hear and receive your word for a rhythm and rest, God, that we would divert daily, that we would withdraw weekly, and that we would abandon annually. God, give us the faith to believe that that could be possible for us now. In Jesus' name, amen. Thanks, guys.